Welcome all of you guys out in Zoom land. And we are very, very pleased today to have a very special guest with us, but I have to go over these bookkeeping items first. And so don't forget that homework 6, the market dividend yield or the Peterson paper analysis is due this Friday. Now, I've only had one question on homework 6 or this assignment, and it's due Friday. So I'm impressed that no one had any questions except for Katie. And so anyway, make sure you get those in. And if you do have a question, pose it as a discussion on Zoom rather than email to me, because that way everybody can see the discussion. Just a reminder that the final project prospectuses are due next Tuesday. And that would be in paper as well as online. And the final project presentations will be the last day of class, which is the 2nd of December, which is Thursday. Now, are those self-propelled? Are they self-propelled, Nick?
Yes.
So they have a locomotion. They have an engine or something. I thought people were just pushing them, like little kid scooters. I was thinking, wow, that's pretty macho. Okay, with no further ado, we have two very special guests today. We have Galindo, who is an entrepreneur from Bryan College Station, who made most of his money in the last couple of decades in real estate. And he has with him an intern from Texas A&M School of Architecture, and he is working this semester in his civil engineering company in Bryan College Station. So we're very glad to have Jonathan with us. And he'd be a good person to talk to if you want to find out what it's like to work in this business. But Galindo is head of the Galindo Group, a group of entrepreneurial companies with headquarters in Austin, Texas. He started with delivering of engineering services to developing countries and the provision of solder services to developing countries and provision from Bolivia, which then expanded into Denmark. After these initial successes in South America and Europe, he ventured into new fields, including real estate development, construction and management, as well as banking, health and fitness, and corporate management, and has not worked for someone else since he left Brown and Root a number of years ago. He has been making it on his own, which is really hard to do, and you'll sort of see here in a second. He began developing Bryan College Station Community, which is there's a sister school to Rice called Texas A&M. It's a very famous school, and everybody that goes to A&M is pretty hardcore about it. But anyway, it's in the Bryan College Station area, which is sort of northwest of here. It has contributed substantially to the growth of several counties in central Texas. Since it began developing in Texas, I'm talking about Galindo Inc., in the mid-70s, Galindo Inc. has developed a total of nearly 800 acres in Brazos County, 40 acres in Cedar Park, Williamson County, 53 acres in San Angelo, Tom Green County, and 7 acres of a total of 45 development in Pflugerville, Travis County. These developments' property tax values total over $500 million, and he told us today at lunch that he does have a portfolio of approximately $1 billion in these properties. So Ram is the president of the Galindo Group. So let me just briefly take you through this. This is Mr. Galindo, and he is an engineer. He'll tell you that he's an engineer from Texas A&M University, and he controls the Galindo Group, which is an entrepreneurial holding company which has these companies associated with it. And this is a portfolio that Mr. Galindo has built up from scratch. As you see, the total experience kind of looks like this. So these are the companies that he has been involved in or sold or traded over the years, in banks, apartment complexes, engineering companies, Royal Oaks. My family was investing in a couple of these projects. It's not really a well-known thing that if you have a well-run real estate investments, you can like bring in like 8% a year to the investors, which is a pretty decent return unless you're getting entrepreneurial profits at the beginning, which of course Ram is going to talk to us about how to get those. But he's been involved in coffee companies and many other companies, as you see here, and it's just no end to the kind of stuff that this kind of mind will come up with. So with no further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Ram. Here, I'll put this on you if you put that in your pocket somewhere. We put on this pretty blue sweater.
Yeah, and I carry this, and this is
yeah, this button here, I'll turn it next. Okay. There you go. Try that, see if it works. Yeah, there you go.
Well, John, thank you very much for inviting me here again. It is always a pleasure and an honor to be in your class. I've known Dr. Joe Doberman for many, many years. Let me tell you, you should count your blessings for having him as a teacher. He is just the best, and I've watched teachers in many universities, and he's among the very best, so you're very lucky to have him. With me today, I have an intern from Texas A&M, John Bear, who has come with me, and he is the person who has prepared all the data that I will present to you in this report, sir. He not only knows how to do the detail, but he also now knows how to envision the project from the top and see how it comes together with all of its structural parts. In the past, I've always presented to Dr. Doberman's class case studies, specific projects that actually happen in the world, in the field, and have a history of from the conception of the idea that came into my head to the point that we finished the project or we sold it. Over my lifetime, I have developed about maybe 30 companies. I've sold most of them, and I still maintain a core of about 17 companies which are operating today. And just to explain a little more how the diversity of interests that have come into my life happen, I like to do sports. I run and I do triathlons and I swim. I spend a lot of time doing that. Doing all this, I thought to myself, well, I'm spending a lot of money doing this. I should get some utility out of it. I should start a business that combines my interest in running with the ability to make an economic profit. So I formed a chain of fitness clubs called Aerofit. You may have seen it there, which I recently sold. I also realized that I was paying a lot of my money that I made in profits to the bank as interest. So again, I said to myself, why don't I do my own bank? And you know, you have this idea, so you don't really know what you're doing, but when you wind up doing it, you learn a whole new line of business and the restraints and controls that these industries have. I just give you that as a basis for you to understand how these business classes that you're taking can open doors to you in so many fields that at this point today, as you sit in your chairs, are probably unfathomable. In a few years, you'll say, oh, that background that I have with that instructions that I received from Dr. Doberman's class and others, I feel I'm prepared to do more. So today I'm going to tell you about a case study of a project that John and I are working on together. This is the class. We're going to develop a, from the ground up, and 15 condominium complex that is not a big project. It is not a very small project. It's a medium project. It's something that any of you can do yourselves in a couple of years after you finish with your advanced degrees. So the two things that you consider first when you consider project is this the right time? Is this the right time? And is it in the right location? I'm talking about real estate now. This is just real estate. What are your considerations when you consider timing? Well, am I in an area that has a growth history of the population and the economy growing? That's the first question you ask. Or am I in a time where things are going down economically? Then you consider the neighborhood in which you are, the neighborhood. You know, the big area, Houston, metropolitan Houston, you can subdivide it in many sections. The neighborhood of where Rice is totally different than a neighborhood in the east side of town by the ship channel. You know, different concepts in there. You consider what is the specific area in which you're going to be building this project? What is the employment base that would allow people to spend money in your project? I'm going to move to this side so once you have completed your analysis of the timing of the area in which you will be, you look at the national economic outlook. Are we in a period of stable interest rates? Are we in a period of rising interest rates or decreasing interest rates, inflation or no inflation? You consider all those factors before you decide to launch the ship. These interest rate fluctuations, we'll look at it in a little more detail later. So if you're considering a housing program, you have to consider whether it's a single family project, whether it is an apartment complex, whether it is a condominium project, a high rise or a low rise. So in your mind, you process what is the best use for that piece of land that you're considering after you took all these items into account. Then you need to know, is all the infrastructure that I need for this in this particular case? We only have a water line and an electric line service in the ground. We need to expand access. We need to extend electricity, internet, gas, several other factors of public infrastructure that are needed. And then lastly, you have to say, what are the social services in the area? Do they have schools? Do they have hospitals? Do they have a police presence? Do they have a fire protection system? Do they have clinics around? All those things take work in your mind to consider whether you're at the right timing while you're considering your project. And then you look at the location considerations. Is the neighborhood easily accessible? Is it close to a highway that will be not too hard from it to get to your site? Once you get past the access, you have adequate road and street connections. What are the zoning entitlements? This can be a killer in a project. Houston doesn't have, to my knowledge, John, you might correct me, up to today, they still don't have zoning in Houston. If you own the land, you can do whatever you want in it. Your neighbors, say you decide you're going to put a car repair shop in your lot, and your neighbor's got a nice house, and on the other side there's a nice restaurant or something. The last thing they want is a car repair shop right next to your property. So most cities have adopted zoning ordinances which tend to predict the use of the land. So when you go buy a piece of property there, you know that a few years down the road, nobody's going to come and put a car sales, used car sales shop or something like that. What are the occupational centers? If you're going to put housing in this area, where do they go to work? Are they near a hospital that employs a lot of people? Are they near a university that they employ a lot of people? Or are they in the middle of nowhere? Then you determine whether these location factors will affect the design of your project. We spoke a little bit about utilities here. I already told you. Even though the utilities are not at the site that we're developing now, they're nearby, or we can extend them without prejudicing the integrity, the economic integrity of the project. And then what off-site improvements are there needed? You know, if it rains a lot and you fill up everything with concrete and pavement and rooftops, that water will run off and flood somebody else downstream from you. So you have to make sure that some improvements are needed to retain that rainwater, or to, you know, it goes to parking, it goes to a lot of other factors that determine the feasibility of your project, all the off-site improvements. And lastly, okay, I'm gonna build an apartment complex. In this case, we're gonna build a condominium project. How many other similar projects are there in the same market area? How much do they cost? How much do people pay rent? So you do a pretty exhaustive study to understand the market in which you're gonna be working. So that's how you start. Now I wanna show you, because I know that many of you are not familiar with how the population in Texas is laid out. You have Dallas-Fort Worth here. You have Austin, San Antonio here. They're connected by a major highway that goes all the way to Laredo, bringing all the traffic from Mexico all the way to Chicago. So this is a main thoroughfare right here, a main interstate highway. Dallas to Houston. Houston is right here. So that's another big corridor. So you have Houston, San Antonio, Dallas. That triangle right there is the golden triangle of Texas. That's where most of the economic activity in Texas is. And that is concentrated in the cities of San Antonio, Austin, which is the capital, Houston with all its suburbs, and Dallas-Fort Worth. Texas A&M University is at the edge of the Brazos River right here, and it has a community called Bryan College Station, which is perfectly located within that triangle. I did that just so you understand how the big picture is also a factor in determining whether your location is right or not. We talked about the population of the area. So Bryan College Station is in the county of Brazos County. And Brazos County has really two major cities within, the city of Bryan and the city of College Station. They're so connected to each other that you don't know where you are, whether you're in one or the other. The streets just run across. But they have separate municipal governments. They have different laws, and they have different taxes, and they have different services. So it's important whether you know which one you're in and how you can benefit out of the other one. John gave me some statistics here about how the population in Brazos County has grown, starting in 1970 to 50-year growth. You can see that it's just pretty steady growth in there. And this ordinance here tells you the percentage of increase that it happens. So from about starting at this point to about this point, in that period, the population has grown from about, let's say, 5,000 to 23,000, 24,000. So pretty impressive growth, much higher than other areas in the state and in the country.
Can't you say that the trend of growth is decreasing?
We'll see that in the next, is it in this slide? This is the slide, yes. This is the trend of growth, the percent change. You can see this is for the city of Bryan only. This is not the whole county, but city of Bryan is pretty much representative of the whole county. You can see, if you can move this a little bit, don't know if you can or not.
Yeah, can you move that black thing?
That's okay. I mean, this is a percentage scale, just like in here. It's a percentage scale. This is a percentage scale here. Yes, you can see at one point it was growing at about 15%, 14%, and now it's only growing at 6%. So as the mass, as the base changes, the base continues to get bigger, the same increment of people is a smaller percentage increment. In terms of people, they're still growing pretty significantly, but percentage-wise, it is decreasing. Good observation. So Brazos County is growing with this trend. Bryan is going with this trend. The population growth is coming down, but the 6% of it's still, let's say 6% of the population is now about 80,000. Let's say it's 4,800 people in 1 year added. Over here was 14% on a population of 30,000. That's still more. That would be about 12%, 12,000 people maybe. And then, so the next thing when you study these graphs, you decide what causes these changes? Why there was this big dip and then this big hump in here? While Texas A&M University is the equivalent of a Fortune 500 company headquartered in Brazos County, it is still also very much influenced by the oil-based economy of Texas. There's oil fields in the area. In the mid-1980s, the price of oil went from about $65 a barrel to about $25 a barrel. A bunch of oil companies went broke. There was a renaissance later. The banks went broke. The Resolution Trust Corporation had to take over, and a lot of macroeconomic factors that we as developers or as businessmen don't control, but they define the environment in which we work financially. So this graphs will show you all this, and it'll prompt the question in your mind, and then you'll have to answer, why did this happen? You understand what happened. Now this is just the neighborhood in which we're going to put the project. This is a part of the city of Bryan, one of the high growth areas of Bryan. And this area that is circled by the blue line is pretty much what I have developed in my lifetime. I'm responsible for about 1,000 acres of that, and there's probably about 2,000 acres in here. So I've seen about half of that happen myself. And what John did is he got the boundaries of the area that is of interest to us and figured out what was the property value, that's called the cadastral value of the properties built within the area here. In 2011, it was about, the average property value was about 149,000 maybe. Today, the average property value is about 260,000, 65,000. So there's been a big increment. Some of it is due to inflation, but the bulk of it is that the standards are getting better and people are getting more involved with it. The percent change, again, it suffers these radical changes, 2016 to 17. That's when, see what happened in 2016.
That was the opening of the Relis campus.
Right. Texas A&M opened up a second campus there, and that brought in a lot more people and caused a spike on the percent change. And then it stabilized itself again. So one move that the 800-pound gorilla makes in his little cage, in the big cage, everybody else feels it disproportionately. So we're looking at the whole picture to determine whether this is a good idea or not. So now we talked about the Relis campus. This is our neighborhood right here. This is the campus of Texas A&M University. Rice is a beautiful, large campus. I mean, it is indescribably beautiful. Texas A&M sits on 5,000 acres of land. And it has a huge campus. It has its own airport, which is in here, it's not even part of that. They have, anybody know how many students that go to Texas A&M?
40,000,
How many?
40 to 60,000.
65,000 today. So it's huge. How many go at Rice? 4,000?
4,000 undergrads.
So it's more than 10 times bigger, right? Huge budget and all that. So that is the main employment center here. I think they have more than 4,000 employees between teachers and service people and all that. And then in addition of that, they built a new campus up here, which is in the road to Austin. And while this campus is still under construction, many buildings are already up, and they have a lot of federal contracts which are providing more employment and more need for services. So that's another service center, another employment service. This is a biotech corridor. There's a hospital and some vaccine companies that are making new vaccines for COVID and all that. They're all selling in here. And so we're located right here where the star is. And there's an industrial park here in downtown Bryan. So we're right in the middle of all the employment centers. So that's a perfect location for that, strategic location. And you do this whether your project is in, I don't know where you guys come from, but let's say you come from Malaysia or Singapore or something, you still do this analysis. All right, we talked about interest rates. We tracked the interest rates for the last 11 years here, from 2008 to 2019. This is the mortgage rates. This is the rate at which a homeowner will have to borrow the money for. And they pretty much run in a fairly narrow range between 5 and let's say 6.5%. So within a 1.5% range, for the last 11 years, they have been pretty stable, which is a very good thing for investment in real estate. I mean, when you can offer steady stream of payments to a potential customer, knowing that his rates are not going to change very much, that helps. You know, before this year's and this pretty much corresponds with a Great Recession, 2008, right, when which one went broke? Lehman Brothers, yeah, went broke and the economy almost collapsed totally. And after that, it's been pretty stable. I think we're going to be.
You know, Ron, no one talks about the 10, 11% mortgages of the past.
Yeah.
It seems so normal, and now you have these like cheap.
Yeah, this is ideal. Still living now, yeah. That's in another project that I had, which I had a 10-year loan, it was 7%. And then I refinanced that same project for a new loan at 3.2%. Saved more than half of the money that I was paying in interest for. All of a sudden, the economic attractiveness of that project went from this to this. You know, it became a very good asset. So looking at, and again, this is a macroeconomic thing that we have nothing to do with. We can't affect that. It's all in the hands of the marketplace, which I guess the Federal Reserve Board has something to do with that, but they don't have total control of that. It's just something that we can't even affect with whatever we do. But you gotta look at it to see, and right now, the future, there's inflation, and when inflation starts, interest rates go up, so things are gonna change here in this only goes to 2019. You can stop me anytime if you have any questions. All right, now we get down to the project itself. Where that star was, now it's the nitty-gritty. We finished with a big picture. This is, I don't know if you can see, this is a big road. Dr. Doberman is very familiar with the project that we built right across the street here, an apartment complex, Regency Gardens. So I still had a little lot next to it, but it was very, you all know how to read contour lines? In civil.
How high an elevation is?
Yeah, so each one of these lines is the same elevation. It's a horizontal line. So you can see that if this is 290, this is 289, so you can tell how the land is following. And when it all falls down, this is a creek, that's a creek, that's a creek. And when they get tightened up, that means the banks are almost vertical, right? Very straight up and down. So we had a difficult site here because it had a creek going through here, it has a creek going here, and another creek going here. You will see that this creek is now dried out because when I built the subdivision here, I changed the flow of water. The flow doesn't come here anymore. It runs on the street, on the curves, or it flows into this tank over here. So this is dry. So we can fill that up and use it for construction land. This is also dry. So the only creek that really runs is this. This rest of the land we're gonna use for construction. We're gonna use for usable purposes. So the first thing we do then is look at the topography. And this is heavily treed. We're gonna have to take a lot of the trees, and there are ordinances as you move along in actually the nitty-gritty of construction that you can't just take all the land, all the trees out. You have to replace vegetation, so you have a landscaping plan that you have to put in place after it's finished. John can speak about that with more recent knowledge than I do, but I believe that no more than 70% of this land can be covered with rooftops or streets. The rest has to be permeable land so the water can percolate into the underground. And that 70% of the land is going to run into this creek of the water it's going to run, so the volume in the street is going to increase. And there's a pipe that's running right through under the street here. It's going to run around eventually to the Brazos River. So you got to study all those things and see earth movement. First, clearing and grubbing. Clearing and grubbing is the name given to taking all the trees out, grubbing everything out, leaving it to where you can bring the ground to the levels that you want to bring it to put the houses in it. So the site is about 1.2 acres in here, and we're gonna put 16 condominiums. And we're restricted as to how much we can put in by more factors that I'll show you next. But this is showing to you what the access is. We don't have access. This is a big freeway, big street. It's a good point, a good time to bring that up. You cannot put curb cuts anywhere you want to in the street. There's a curb cut here and a curb cut here, and they got to be 400 feet away from each other. We could maybe put another curb cut here, but it would have to be right over the creek, and we can't do that. So in order to give access to this lot, we have to extend the service road from here to enter through here. We'll show you that in a minute. There's a power line that runs right in front of the lot here, and it has several power poles that block the entrance. So we have to move at least one of those poles. We have to bury the lines and go underwater. There's a water line that runs in front of the property. I said that before. we can connect to that water line. But the sewer line that will provide us the wastewater for these houses here ends right in here, and it's going that way. So we have to extend an extension of that sewer line to bring it into here. And what becomes critical there is the height, the existing height of the invert elevation on the sewer line. All of you know what an invert elevation is? So invert elevation is the bottom line flow of the sewer at the bottom of the manhole. In other words, that's you can't go any lower than that because then you can't drain the sewer. So that point determines what the slopes of your pipes and what the height of the slabs of the houses will be to be able to drain to that invert elevation. So we consider all those things, and the sewer lines have to be below the water lines, and all of it has to be under the ground, the electric lines. So you start to take all these things into consideration when you decide whether this project is feasible or not. We've passed all those tests, the hydrology, the access, the power lines, I told you, the internet and the water and the sewer. So we determined that this can be a go. All right, this is what we're going to come up with. Once we take all the trees out, we cover we move the ground. We're going to build this access road here, enter through here. We're going to take a power pole that's in here. We're going to take it out. We're going to make the street in here. We had to check with the fire department to see if it was okay with them for them to drive a fire truck into here and come put out a fire up over here. And so there's requirements that we have to meet in regards to the turning radius of the trucks and the distance that they can back up into and all that. We passed all that. We had to check with the highway department to see that we could put a service road along the main road of Villa Maria here to enter the stop. And then we had to check with the utility company to see if we could move this pole and move it over there and then bring underground utilities, underground electric to here. And when we bring the underground electric, we bring the internet as well, and the gas line. So the blue line here represents the boundaries within which we have to maintain our construction. These are buffer zones that we keep by ordinance to protect the neighbors from being too close to us. As you saw in the previous drawing, this is a creek. And these are the houses on the other side of the creek. And so this creek is going to cross this road here on that pipe that I showed you before. We can put 1, 2, 3, 5, 9, 6, 15 condominiums there. So these are going to be 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, except for these 2, which are going to be 2-bedroom only. So when you put a 3-bedroom unit, you have to provide 3 parking spaces on the outside. And so that becomes the limiting factor, how many cars you can park. So our 3-bedroom units are going to have 1 garage, which counts as a parking spot, and 2 in the front driveways. You can see here the driveways. So these are going to be pretty well concrete aprons for the parking. So what's left in permeable land is the fringes that I show you there, plus this area is here, this area right here, this area right here, this area right here, and this area right here. And that is just a little more than 30%, I think so. Just at the limit of how much we can utilize this site for. And we really couldn't put any high rises because of the same parking problem. Parking for a developer, remember this is very important. Parking is more often in urban environments the limiting factor as to how many dwelling units you can put in there. So you all get the picture now? These are going to be 3-bedroom units, 1 car in the garage, 2 outside, right there. And those are 22 feet long,
25 by 33.
25 by 33. No, the parking,
Oh, the parking feet are 24 feet long,
24 feet long.
but 9 to 12 feet wide.
He knows the project as well as anybody does. And at Texas A&M, in the Department of
Urban planning.
Urban Planning, you cannot get a degree unless you have gone and worked in the private sector for one semester. They call that an internship. And historically, a lot of those graduates have been doing internships with us. John is one of the better ones that we've had. So he's fulfilling this requirement before he can go to graduate school now. All right. So we built it. We decided what we're going to do, but here are our challenges now. This is really, physical challenges. We have the site optimization that you see. I've shown you how we have, I think we have optimized the size, the site, the use of the site. We have figured out what to do with the transmission lines. We're going to leave them there except for one pole that we're going to move. That was a big fight with the utility company. They don't just take anything, okay, I'll go do it. And eventually, even though they collect the money from the meters that you set for them in the property, they make you pay for the delivery system. Very unfair, but that's the power of being the big boy, I guess, So we have to put in the cost of the power line that feeds the condos into the cost of the condo, because the utility line, which is the utility company, which is the beneficiary of that sale of power, he doesn't want to pay for it. He just wants to put his meter and send a bill for the power that is consumed. So we have all kinds of problems with all the utilities. I pointed that out here just because it is the same thing with the gas. At least the gas company will tell you, okay, you put in the gas line, but every time I hook up a condo to the gas line, I'll rebate you so much money. The power company doesn't want to rebate any money. It's my line. Once you bring it to the meter, it's my line, you pay for it, but it's mine. And then I'll collect the bills myself. Pretty abusive. Gotta find a good attorney to litigate that. Okay, I showed you in the previous drawing how we couldn't do a direct curb cut to the main street. We have to go through a little service road parallel to the main road. That was another fight. I mean, highway department doesn't like to make that kind of exceptions, but fortunately we were able to do that fairly easily. But we still had to prepare a lot of exhibits and have a lot of meetings with them. And then we had to connect that service road to an existing front street that I had built before. The city is going to have something to say about that. Without calling it hydrology, I told you about how the water drains and how the water from the rain, runs off, and that's all part of the hydrological analysis for the site. That's pretty substantial also. This is an expensive operation, especially what I showed you there. We have that deep creek, and we have to clear all the land and move all the dirt. That doesn't come cheap. And then we have to go and extend the sewer line and the gas line and the internet line. So all these physical challenges that we had to face and resolve before we made the decision to proceed. And then we had these legal constraints that I want to hammer you with again. The zoning entitlements. Are they going to allow us to put these condominiums in an area that is single-family homes? Are they going to allow us to do it on a private street rather than in public streets? Is the city going to give us all the permits we need? Are there deed restrictions that cover that piece of land right now? And they are, and we have to make sure that what we're doing there meets the deed restrictions. Anybody knows what a deed restriction is? Okay, so when you make a subdivision in Texas, you start selling the houses. But anybody who buys a house that wants to know that the value of that house is going to be preserved over the years and no undesirable construction is going to come nearby. So you write a document called deed restrictions and you file it as a public document of record in the courthouse. And nobody can put any other kind of houses except the ones you have indicated, and you can specify the size of the house, the material the house will be built of, the location within the lot. The deed restrictions pretty much ensure that the quality of the house that you're buying will not be diminished by the house that gets built next door. It is predictable. It doesn't allow you to shoot guns. It doesn't allow you to have sheep or, chickens, whatever else you want to have. So, the lot we bought, the land that we're doing this in, has these existing deed restrictions. So we have to make sure that we were within those restrictions. And then whenever you sell a subdivision, all those guys that bought the land, they want to make sure that they have the power to enforce the deed restrictions. So they form a homeowners association. Can anybody give me an idea of what a homeowners association would be? It's a legal entity that the homeowners built there, and they elect their representatives, and their charge duty is to enforce the subdivision restrictions. That's what they do. And the nice subdivisions, they all have a homeowners association. I'm going to be asking a few questions at the end of my presentation here, so I hope all of you are paying attention. I said before, we need to make sure the fire trucks and the police has action. That subdivision is going to be fenced in. Nobody can drive in unless they have a card or a key that allows them to open the gate. Well, we need to make sure that we coordinate that with the fire trucks and the police so they have access themselves to the fenced-in subdivision. And then the Condominium Declaration, that's another document that you filed that it tells you exactly how your rights within the unit that you bought, you're the sole owner and decider of what you do there. But once you start moving to the common areas, you have the rights of your neighbors to keep in mind and be considered about. And you sign off on that you understand that before you buy your condominium. So these are the development challenges that you have on a project like this. Now, the investors, this comes to the point of who owns this business. So the people who gave the money to build this, they want to know are this going to be for sale? Are they going to be for rent? How am I going to come out from Galindo, if I give you my money, how are you going to make sure that I get back what I gave you? Well, we have two strategies to exit the project. And this is probably what most of you are more involved with the finances. One is that we operate the whole 15 units as rentals, and one is that we sell them as condos. So let's see what happens if we just decide to operate as rentals. Let's say that we're going to average 90% occupancy. 15 times 12, that's what, 180? Is that right? So you have 180 units a month, right? You're going to have 180 rents that you receive during the year, but we only assume that we'll have 90% of that. So we'll have about 172 units that we can count on that the rent is coming in. And so that gives us $219,000. We can count renting the units at 90%, it'll be $219,000. The operating expenses, we calculate that there will be about $100,000. So the net operating income, not including financing costs, or taxes, or insurance, it'll give you about $119,000. Your interest, taxes, and insurance will be about $49,000. So you will get about 60,000 annually. Say one of you says, I like your project a lot. I'm going to give you $600,000, which is what I'm asking for to start the building. And every year then I'll get 60,000, which is about 10%. So over a period of about 10 years, I'll get about 66% return, but it's steady, predictable. So that's one, I'll recover my money, right? Take me about 10 years. If we sell them as condos, on the other hand, and then this again is just paper will take anything, right? You can write anything on paper. So there's 15 condos. They'll have an average sales price of $200,000 each, with a total expected revenue of $3 million. It'll take us about $175,000 to build every unit. So 175 times 15, $2,600,000. So we'll have $400,000 of distributable profit when everything is sold. And if you put $600,000 in equity, you'll get a return about 66%. And that'll come in about 2 years, maybe between 2 and 3 years, all of it will be sold, which is a very good return. So if I go approach, who of you has a little money saved? Anybody here? Or your family? You do? If I go approach you for invest with me $600,000 here or here, it doesn't matter. If we keep them as rentals, you'll still get 10% every year for your money. But if we sell them, you'll get your money back in about 2 to 3 years. Get all your money back. Then you might say, well, let's try to sell them. If we don't sell them all, we rent the others, so we can use a combination of both. So a smaller project like this lends itself to a twin exit strategy for the investors. They can sell some and operate the rest as rentals. So that's how you envision a project, that's how you plan it, that's how you bring it to reality, and eventually that's how you bring it to market. Now, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I think that's my last slide, right? I'll leave that in there. Thank you. Did I leave any unknowns in your brain as I was going through it that you would like?
How much work is behind all of these little numbers that look so easy to throw out?
Yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of experience, especially. For instance, when I tell you I'm going to collect $219,000 if 90% of them are occupied, well, he sampled how many similar projects have you sampled?
Between 12 and 24.
So he went to different comparable projects like this, find out how much they rent for, how much the area is, how much additional side attractions they have in it, and we concluded that we could rent them for whatever this is, 90% off.
Did you find 90% occupancy in Bryan College Station as a whole?
I found on average, we're sitting at 95%, but we give ourselves a little bit of room to estimate on the lower end, just to be more conservative. Also, there's a whole Excel spreadsheet behind all of this. It's gigantic.
Yeah.
Another example is the total cost per unit. That's including the road we'd have to put in, that's including the sewer line, the water line, all that's added up into the total cost.
Yeah, right here.
Not just the building itself.
How much will it cost us to build each unit? Like it says, it starts with the engineering that you do first, the cleaning and grabbing, everything is built into this. So we can build this project for about $3 million in round terms, right? So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes behind each one of these numbers.
Now, would you put this together as a limited partnership typically?
Probably, yeah. So in spoke at the beginning about the different companies that I have. Each project that I have is encased in a fireproof casket, so that if one company goes bad, the others don't get dragged down. They're all independent. So this will be a separate company, already is a separate company that has no other assets except this. I will have no other liabilities except this. So, but whoever invests in here, you know, he doesn't have the hope of getting the benefit from another project either. It's just
So this would be an LLC?
LLC. Yeah.
How is the average gross sale price per unit calculated? Are you projecting forward based on past appreciation?
So on that analysis, in that market study that he did for rentals, he also did, and this is easy to make because Zillow and other, they give you the projects that they have for sale and how much it costs and all that. But nevertheless, you want to see some of them.
Ultimately, it came down to taking a lot of the, what they're selling at per square foot, and then getting the square footage of the comparable units around the cities, and then taking that average and applying it to how much square feet we have per unit. As a good comparable, we have these units right down the road that are very similar in both square footage and rooms, 3 beds, 2 baths, 2-car driveway, 2-car garage.
But also we have our own data that we accumulate over the years to see what our construction costs are. And we feel comfortable that based on what he said and what our data says, we can build this for about $175,000.
Does this include the latest commodity price increases on lumber?
It does not. It does not. This was done about 4 months ago, 3 months ago.
This was 3 months ago, but I did build in an auxiliary cost to try to compensate for that. That was just a completely random number chosen by me, though.
Yeah, the data that we have does not include and now it's going to change even more with inflation. Anybody else with any questions? I'm going to ask a few questions to you. Is that proper?
Go ahead and ask.
To see what they think. Can you tell me what is the main thought that you got out of it?
I think you have a question.
Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering what a typical statute of limitations is on deed restrictions. Like, when do those run out? And have you ever attempted to challenge one?
The deed restrictions?
Yeah.
It takes 95% of the vote of the people who subscribe to the restrictions to agree to the
Okay.
change in proposal.
Okay.
So once that deed restriction is signed, it's very hard to change. That was a very good question.
Okay.
Because legally you cannot change. I mean, I guess you could, but somebody could sue you, say that's not a valid change.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Any other question like that? Because you guys are experts at this now.
So you're assuming a cash deposit and a cash construction, no construction loans or?
Yeah, no, construction, absolutely. The equity is $600,000. The equity, the cost of the project is $2 million. $2,600,000. And the equity is $600,000, so we're going to borrow $2 million. So $2 million we're going to be paying interest to the bank during construction. It's a construction loan. Once the building is finished, either we'll sell them all or we'll enter into a mortgage loan for the whole thing with partial releases on it.
He makes it sound so easy, but it's really quite complicated.
Have you heard of crowd-funded real estate investment platforms? So rather than taking equity investments from high net worth individuals, anyone just puts money into a pot and then the developer takes, that money and the platform handles.
Yeah, I have heard about crowdfunding for other things, but I'm not, you're opening my eyes to crowdfunding a development project in real estate?
Yeah, it's new. It's like a new concept.
I never heard of that. So to raise $2.6 million, what is the usual size of crowdfunding? How much?
For this, it can get pretty big. So it's a new strategy basically to let everyday people invest in either pre-IPO companies or, private development projects, but they can, they've raised more than 2.6, around 10 million sort of seems to be the cap.
You know, I need to learn more about that, John. We need to take note of that. I do know this, that whenever you get money from an investor and you're not able to pay him back because the project didn't go well, it doesn't leave a very good taste in the mouth of the investors.
Yeah.
So I always try to I've only had to do it once, and unfortunately, the government knows about that. But we minimize the loss that the investors took. But every other project that I've done has been very successful. I guess the problem would be with crowdfunding is that I wouldn't know who I'm sort of say getting in bed with.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where can we research that?
I've mostly heard about it from a lot of these, the platforms are startups. So I hear about them TechCrunch is a big journalism site that covers startups, which is where I found out about them. But they seem to be gaining traction. So I was just wondering if it was something that.
I think it's an interesting idea. I could see a problem coming with, and the thing is, investors, when they invest in something, they'll want a return on it. And if you have a large pool of investors all submitting different amounts, that can become hard, maybe sticky to keep track of.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's the value proposition of the platform, is that they do that. So you guys get theoretically the same amount of money, and then you just communicate with one single, the money goes into a pot, and you guys are really dealing with the platform as an investor.
okay, like a GoFundMe or.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's a great idea. Thank you for the hint. The one thing that would dissuade me a little bit to explore that with the purpose of doing it is that when you have so many investors and you don't know them, you would expect some problems if things don't go perfectly well. But that's true about any investment. You don't know how things will go.
Yes. On the flip side of that question is, how are you typically finding investors for your projects? Is it personal connections?
Up until this point, before the pandemic, it was personal connections. Right. When the pandemic hit, just before it hit, I was contemplating building a $50 million project by itself.
Okay.
And to get that kind of money, I went out beyond my personal connections to find money through brokers, people who broker money. And I was able to find some, but then came up problems with zoning, and it was 2 years wasted. And now I have found a company that, U.S. bonds, when the U.S. Treasury tells the federal, when the Congress tells U.S. Treasury, sell however many trillion dollars they're going to sell because they don't have the money to pay for all this. So the Treasury Department goes to the Federal Reserve Bank and it says, buy some of my notes, right? The Federal Reserve, that's what they do. But they can't buy that much. So the balance goes to sell to foreign countries or foreign buyers. Japan, China, Singapore, the European Union, they all buy U.S. Treasury bonds and notes because that's the gold standard of debt. And so treasurer says, okay, here's an issue of $200 million or $100 million that I want to sold on this date. There's about 50 or 60 companies that are pre-qualified, and they're called the primary lenders. And they say, okay, I'll take so much, and they subscribe that debt. But if the bonds are 3% bonds, let's say they are 3% bonds, they buy them at 3% plus 10 basis points, maybe not 10 basis points, but small difference. But in $100 million, that's a lot of difference. So these guys buy them, but they don't buy them for their own account. That's too much money. So they go to market makers, which are the people who distribute that downstream a little more, and they sell to pension funds, university funds, labor unions, whoever buys U.S. bonds because of the credibility that they have. And they buy at a little higher rate. So the market maker is also making a profit. And eventually those market makers, it disperses down to the individual buyers such as us, which buy the bonds at even a little more discount or a little more interest rate. So in my ambulatory walking through the money brokers, I found a company in London, England, which really has a base in Canada, that buys bonds from the primary lenders, primary borrowers, primary lenders, I guess. And they buy for the market maker, and they say they need money to buy those bonds, right? Because they have to put the cash into the treasury funds, into the Federal Reserve treasury funds. So they collect money from investors, and they produce a minor, but it's for the life of the bond. So if you get in 1/10 of 1%, 10 basis points, I guess, on, say you put $10 million in it for 10 years from the US government, you're pretty secure with that, right? So invest that money and you get to accumulate that, and you can present value it now to get the money to raise the equity to get the project done. So that's the latest experiment I'm running on that. When I learn more about that, I'll be glad to come and talk to you first about that. Thank you for the information.
What's your outlook on the state of national and international real estate markets in the next 1 to 2 years?
Jeez, I'm no expert on that, but I can tell you this. I spoke about the $50 million project that I had, which I lost during the pandemic. And I didn't lose it because of the pandemic. I lost it because of the entitlements, zoning entitlements that I needed the city to grant me, which I couldn't get in time to take advantage of my financing because of objections of the neighbors. They didn't want, not in my backyard, NIMBY, right? They didn't want that built near their houses. So I had made an agreement with a venture capital company, which was sticking his foot out of the technology field, which they do that in California, they're big in the technology field. Remember Renaissance Weekend I talked about before? And they say, well, we're going to experiment putting our money in real estate. Innovation projects that can get good returns. We don't really care where they are, but we're going to put $1 billion in a bucket. We're going to pre-qualify the buyers, and we're going to pre-qualify the projects. And if you're early enough in the queue, we'll finance your project. And not only with the equity, they will provide part of the equity and the whole loan too. And so, boy, this is the answer to all my prayers, right? And then I couldn't get my zoning. And I did have, at the time, I had some potential sales already for this $50 million of condos. Couldn't do it. And so I went back after I finally got them in, this was in January and November, and they told me, you know, the bucket's probably gonna stay usable until the end of August, but we can't assure you that. So when I finally got my entitlements in November of 2020, and I went to them, and he said to me, oh, you know, too bad. Just one project in Singapore alone took 600 million out of that bucket. So that's foreign investments in real estate. So I guess some countries like Singapore are doing very well. That's all I can tell you about that. By the time I wanted my money, it was all gone.
Well, if you don't mind coming back, we'd love to have
Sure, John. It's always an honor for me to come to your class. Thank you.
you. All right, thank you. So, thank you guys so much. Thank you, John, for coming today. And I guess that's about it for today, folks. Thank you so much for your attention.